Hello and welcome to the Bundesliga Show Derby Day Dive-In, brought to you by Over the Bar with your hosts, myself, Rory Petrie and Mark Broadhurst in Nuremberg. So welcome along to our latest edition of our Derby Day Dive-Ins, a mini-series that we have been running alongside our usual Bundesliga show and the European show, of course, as well, which we've just released. These episodes are basically going to be focused on a dive in to the uniqueness of the derbies in and around the Bundesliga. So basically, what makes them so special to the fans, the supporters, and the clubs in general. So do sit back and enjoy the show. This week's edition is going to be the Südderby. So that is the derby between VfB Stuttgart and Bayern Munich. Before we get into it and get a look at the kind of brief history between these two and how the derby got started, if you haven't already, please do click the subscribe button and click the bell icon in the bottom corner so you do not miss out on any shows, as we've got lots of content coming out at the moment. And as always, if you're listening on an audio platform, do click subscribe so you don't miss out on a show, and please leave a review and a rating. So on to the Südderby. So Mark is going to be doing a bit of a run through, a bit of a brief history about how the derby has got going between these two teams from the south, Süd, of Germany. So Mark, over to you to quickly run us through a few bits about these two teams.
Absolutely, yes. So I think for those of you who don't know German geography, and as you can probably see from the name of the geography, the word Süd, it does actually in fact mean south. So this derby literally translates to the South Derby. So yeah, I mean, these two clubs are both based in the deep south of Germany, but on different sides of the south. Munich is based in the heart of Bavaria, which is more like in the southeast of Germany, really. Although the Bavarians won't thank me for saying that it is the east of Germany, but it kind of is, really. Yeah. Whereas Stuttgart is based in Baden-Württemberg, or Schwabia, as it's known as in English, which is really close to the Black Forest and not too far from the border of France and Switzerland in the southwest of the country. So yeah, I mean, these are the biggest two cities in the south of Germany. Of course, again, very, very big cities. Munich is the home. It's also known as the Battle of the Cars as well, because for those of you that don't know, BMW is based in Munich, and also Audi is also based not too far from Munich in Ingolstadt, whereas Stuttgart have obviously Mercedes and Porsche. So yeah, for those of you that didn't know that, it's a bit of interesting information that it's also known as the Battle of the Cars. All of the big kind of German car manufacturers, excluding Volkswagen, are all based in these two big cities. Additionally, they're also kind of Munich is known as being the kind of wealthy city of Germany as well. Munich is like the homeland of the rich, and FC Bayern is very much a club that nowadays represents the rich, whereas Stuttgart like to see themselves as a kind of feisty underdogs, really. And although Stuttgart is also a relatively rich city, it can't be compared to the wealth of Munich. So I think when these two clubs do play twice a season, as it has been for most of the history since they met in 1965, Stuttgart, they feel as though they're kind of overturning the power and the wealth of the establishment in many ways, which is what FC Bayern Munich does kind of represent nowadays, although it hasn't always been like that in the history of Bayern, which we'll talk about in another episode in the future. But yeah, I mean, this is a derby that kind of not so many people know about this derby outside of Germany, but it's definitely a fierce derby, which has actually been spiked by the fact that FC Bayern, as they like to do with most clubs, have stolen a lot of top world-class players from under the nose of VfB Stuttgart, including Klinsmann, and some of you may remember Giovanni Elber as well, who went on to be a great player in the late 90s and early 2000s. He actually came from Stuttgart as well. So yeah, I mean, that kind of intensified the derby, as they tend to do with most of the big German clubs. They stole players. Well, I say they stole players, but they signed players is a better way of putting it, from also other rivals, including Schalke and Dortmund as well. But yeah, this is definitely a derby that has a bit more feist to it than just football. It's definitely it's a political derby. It's about who is the leader in Baden-Württemberg or Bavaria. This is also just another side note as well. There is also a Bavarian derby, if some of you are wondering, between Bayern Munich and Augsburg. But this is more of a recent kind of derby because obviously Augsburg are not such a big club and they've only recently been in the Bundesliga. Whereas Bayern v Stuttgart is a lot more intense because of the number of meetings. I mean, they've met well over 100 times, over 130 times they've met actually. So it's been one of the most frequently played fixtures in German football since the foundation of the Bundesliga in 1963. So yeah, so that's a little bit about the information of the background of the geography and the kind of the basic rivalry between the clubs and why they are rivals. So let's find out from Rory a little bit about the balance of power of this great Süd derby.
Yes, indeed. So as Mark was just alluding to, there have been a number of meetings between these two great sides, well over 100 in fact. And in terms of the balance of power, Bayern Munich, as you would expect, do hold the upper hand in terms of wins. And so the balance of power is an interesting one because often with these derbies, they kind of fluctuate a little bit. And obviously in the episodes we've kind of already recorded their interesting peaks and troughs in terms of their own football club's history. Obviously, the problem is when we're looking at a club like Bayern and the giants that they are, there haven't been too many real kind of lows. So they've always really been obviously a powerhouse of German football. So since their first meeting way back in, well, I say way back in because for a derby that's had so many contests already, the first meeting was back in 1965. So obviously that is a bit of time ago now. However, these two clubs have obviously played a lot in every season since because of having, said number of games between each other, 100 and more in such a space of time. So that's interesting, and naturally Bayern have always kind of had this hold over Stuttgart, as Mark mentioned, kind of like the feisty underdogs. And Stuttgart, to their credit, as a team who are, really well known in Germany, really well established team as well, have, to their credit, managed to notch up a good amount of wins against Bayern as well. So it's certainly one where, as Mark mentioned, there's a little bit more behind it. There's this fight for the supremacy of the South. There's a bit of political kind of edge to it as well. So that all kind of adds together to make a really interesting derby day between these two teams. Of course, in recent history, we've just seen Stuttgart have a couple of yo-yo years, and this year, 2020, 2021, they have indeed returned to the Bundesliga and done so spectacularly well. And with this young squad playing some really nice, attractive football, we hope to see a lot more competitive derbies between the two teams. So hopefully we can see that balance of power really kind of even out a little bit, especially with, like I said, this young, attractive Stuttgart team. So certainly the balance of power has always been on the side of the German giants Bayern, but as we've seen before, Derby Day can basically bring up anything. So it's fair play to Stuttgart. They've played their part many a time in this derby. So that is just a bit of a brief kind of overview of how the balance of power has sat between these two teams over the years since their first meeting back in the 60s. We'll now go back over to Mark, and you're going to talk about the various trophy collections of both sides, which I suspect will be quite sizable.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think everybody knows about Bayern's success. I mean, there's no football fan in the world who doesn't know about Bayern's success, let's be honest. But also Stuttgart have also been, as we'll find out in a minute, they've not been shy of success, you know. I mean, we've obviously talked about in previous derby days between the Berlin clubs who massively lack success, you know. Neither of them have been champions of the country before, whereas Stuttgart have been, as we'll find out in a minute. So yeah, let's start first of all with the head-to-head record, which yeah, they have played a lot of times. Bayern have actually won 88 fixtures between the clubs, including the first meeting, which was a 1-0 victory in 1965. And yeah, also Stuttgart have maybe, okay, yes, this is a derby, and you could say it's not a very good record against their bitter rivals, but still, when you consider that the bitter rivals are Bayern Munich, then 37 wins out of those 135 games is not too bad of a record, you know? It's like when you consider you're playing the 29-time Bundesliga champions, it's not exactly the best, it's not exactly the best team to have as your arch rivals. But yeah, as I said, Bayern have won 88 games to Stuttgart's 35, and there have been 27 draws. Yeah, not so many draws in German derbies, it seems. You know, so that's an extremely low number of draws, really, when you think about it. So yeah, so let's move on more specifically to the individual successes of the club. So let's start with Bayern. I mean, I think everybody knows what they've done. They've won 29 Bundesliga titles since obviously their first ever Bundesliga title, which was interestingly the first Bundesliga season that Bayern played was 2 years after Stuttgart. So Stuttgart took part in the first ever Bundesliga season in 63-64. And Bayern's first one was 2 years after that, which is an interesting stat that some of you may not know. Yeah, which was in 65-66, which, as we've talked about, the first meeting also happened in 65. So yeah, obviously Bayern have won 29 titles compared to 3 Bundesliga titles for Stuttgart. And the most recent one of them was in 2008 when they had the likes of Kevin Karani, who I think some of you might remember. That was a really good time for the Bundesliga, wasn't it? When you had a lot of different champions. I remember also Wolfsburg won it around that time. It was just before the time when Klopp's Dortmund stormed to power as well. So this was a bit of a, if you ever want to talk about a time when Bayern maybe weren't so kind of dominant, it was the 70s and also the 2000s, I would say. The latter part of the 2000s, before the Van Gaal days, I think that was a bit of a weak time for Bayern, really. But yeah, Stuttgart have won 3 Bundesliga championships on top of 2 German championships as well, which were the days before the sport went professional, before 1963. And Bayern have won 1 German championship in 1932. And yeah, in terms of the German Cups, I mean, Bayern have won 20 German Cups. It's just ridiculous, really, isn't it? The numbers are just ridiculous. Stuttgart have also won 3 German Cups, which is far from a pitiful record. It's a very decent record, but it just doesn't compare to Bayern's, does it? And then I think the real difference again here, as we mentioned with a few of the other derbies, it's the European record that really kind of like really shows the difference between the clubs. Bayern have won 6 Champions Leagues, which is joint second with Liverpool. Obviously, Real Madrid leading the way with 13 of those. They've also won 1 UEFA Cup in the 90s. Yeah, I'm not sure whether Bayern will even consider the UEFA Cup to be a good achievement, really, because it means they didn't qualify for the Champions League that year. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's another piece of trophy. 1 European Cup Winners' Cup as well before it was renamed the UEFA Cup, and also they won 2 European Super Cups as well. Most recently, back in I think it was September of 2020. That was only their second Super Cup actually, but they beat Sevilla to win that one. They've also won 3 of the kind of it's changed its name a lot, but they won 3 of them when the leaders of each confederation, so the Asian champions, the North American, I think nowadays it's known as the FIFA Club World Cup, but it's changed names a number of times. They've won 3 of those as well, so quite a decent trophy haul there, that's for sure. And then moving on to Stuttgart, they have won some European trophies actually, but I don't know if you remember this trophy, Rory, but they've won 3 of the Intertoto Cups. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that, but it was also the most Mickey Mouse trophy in the history of football. So, but yeah, they won it. I think it was between the teams that finished below the European places. But if they were happy to start their season in like July or something like that, then they could play like 4 rounds against teams from, I don't know, like Albania and the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't know, to be honest with you. But yeah, teams from like pretty obscure leagues, you know. And yeah, if they give you one like 3 or 4 two-legged ties, you would get a place in the Europa League, yeah, or the UEFA Cup as it was known. But it was later scrapped, and probably for good reasons as well. But yeah, they also had a few good runs in the UEFA Cup as well. They made the final of the UEFA Cup at one time too, but they never managed to win any kind of significant European honours. But yeah, that's just a little bit about the record head to head. So I think obviously it's very, very difficult when comparing to FC Bayern because they are one of the most successful teams in football history and by far the most successful team in Bundesliga history. But I think, yeah, Stuttgart, they've got a decent number of honours, a lot more honours than what some teams in the Bundesliga can boast anyway. So we'll just have to see if this exciting young Stuttgart team of the modern day can maybe add a cup or maybe even get into Europe. It's not out of the reach, really, as things stand, I wouldn't say. But yeah, that's just a bit about the trophy. So let's move now on to some of the iconic matches and the memorable matches that have taken place over the years between these two southern German clubs.
Yes, indeed. So it's been actually quite tricky trying to find some more memorable games and iconic games between these two teams, certainly dating back a little bit further on. So got a few examples of some more recent history between the two clubs to quickly go over with regards to their importance to the two clubs. So we'll just start off with game back in 2016, so obviously pretty recent memory, in April, where Bayern Munich were able to see off their rivals, their Südderby rival Stuttgart, on the way to yet obviously another title win in the Bundesliga, obviously, which would have been 2015-16 season. It was actually an important win, an important match day for Bayern Munich, as their title rivals, Borussia Dortmund, this particular year, drew 2-2 with bitter rival Schalke. So it was a weekend's worth of rivalries which shaped not only the title race, but also what would then follow for Stuttgart, as they were relegated by the end of that season. So obviously we're talking about April, which is really near the end of the usual Bundesliga season. So that, of course, was a really meaningful game for both sides, and certainly Bayern Munich fans would look back at this game with a lot more fond memories, as they would go on to lift the title and see their derby rivals sink down into the second division of Bundesliga, to Bundesliga. So that is certainly a game that would be on some of the fans' minds. Then going forward a couple of years, which will be a game that some Stuttgart fans will definitely not want to forget. Although it does come with a kind of tinge, bittersweet pill perhaps, because in May of 2018, Stuttgart were able to put 4 goals past Bayern Munich, which certainly doesn't happen very often, although it has happened this season with Hoffenheim. But yeah, they were able to beat their arch rivals, their Südderby rivals, 4-1, in which a game where Daniel Sinšek was able to score 2 goals. So that is certainly equals or equates to one of their biggest ever wins, certainly by margin of victory for the side Stuttgart. So that was obviously a really good day for them. The only slight tinge or disappointment will be is that Bayern had already wrapped up the Bundesliga title. So celebrations, of course, for beating your rivals, but at the end of the day, Bayern Munich was still celebrating as they lifted the Bundesliga title anyhow. So yeah, bit of an interesting kind of side story to that. So there's certainly two games that resonate of recent memory. Obviously, with Stuttgart being promoted to the Bundesliga, promoted back into the Bundesliga and doing really well, we're really excited to see how the teams get on in their games this season. I'm sure there'll be two absolute crackers. So yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing how this rivalry now develops in this next era, really, from 2020 onwards. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how these two teams get on and how how the balance of power will then follow. So that's obviously a look back. Now we're looking forward. As I mentioned, we're looking forward to the next Bundesliga match between these two giants, which will be all the way down into match day 26, on the 20th of March in 2020. So yeah, so we're really looking forward to that game at the Allianz between these two Südderby rivals. So that pretty much sums up our look back at the Südderby between these two teams, Bayern Munich and VfB Stuttgart. They certainly have played each other a lot, and there's certainly a lot going on this rivalry, and a fierce one indeed. So thanks very much for listening. As always, please let us know if you're enjoying this mini series that we're working on. If there's any particular Bundesliga derby that we haven't done and you want us to cover, please do just comment and let us know. I'm sure there are other things that me and Mark could look into. Certainly there'll be more Derby Day dive-ins coming on the OTB YouTube channel in the near future. So please do subscribe so you don't miss out. So that's a wrap basically. So over to Mark to summarize and finish off as per.
Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Derby Day Dive-Ins. Yeah, the Sud Derby today. So yeah, let's just have a look. Remember, if you guys want to kind of get more in depth with the Bundesliga show and you want to kind of interact with us more, don't be afraid to subscribe and leave us a comment or a like, or even subscribe and give us a rating on our podcast channel as well, which is really, really good. And yeah, let's have a look at what else you can look at. So yeah, you can also look at our Twitter, which is @OverTheBarFB. This is really, really fantastic if you want to see anything football related, not just Bundesliga. We have La Liga, MLS, just about anything football related. League One, of course. Check out the League One show. They'll kill me if I don't say that. Yeah. And yeah, also visit our site as well, which is our main masterpiece, really. You can see just about anything on there, really, anything football related at otbfootball.net. And yeah, again, keep interacting with the show. We've got more and more shows coming for you. We've got other things related to friendships with clubs as well. So stay in touch. And yeah, we'll keep bringing more to you. So as it's in Germany, tschüss.
Till next time.